one of our high priorities in the context of being a global leader is our membership and participation in the Indo-Pacific region. And when you look at the Southeast Asian countries that we will be visiting, they are at the seat of the Indo-Pacific region. We have interests there that relate to both security interests, economic interests, and more recently, global health interests.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris before leaving for her tour of Southeast Asia. She arrived in Singapore on Sunday. Her trip comes as China's influence grows in the region. Critics say the vice president faces a difficult task of convincing partners there of U.S. commitments, which some allies have already questioned due to the Taliban returning to power in Afghanistan and after a chaotic pullout of U.S. troops from the country. For more on all this, I want to bring in CBSN contributor Isaac Stonefish. Isaac is also the founder and CEO of Strategy Risks. Isaac, given what's going on in Afghanistan, give us some context for the significance of this trip.
The pullout in Afghanistan, as bungled as it may be, is the end of the U.S. war on terror and symbolizes the beginning of the next conflict that we are very likely to fight, one that will involve China and our interests and our influence in the region versus that of Beijing and the Chinese Communist Party. And Harris's visits to Vietnam and Singapore, a lot of the other administration attention over the last several months points to this eventuality.
So, Isaac, if this trip is on face a symbolic counter to China's influence in the region, what specific commitments are regional leaders looking to get from the U.S.?
The specific commitments they're looking to get might not be the one Harris delivers. I think the countries in question, namely Vietnam and Singapore, both want to be reassured that the U.S. will defend them militarily in the case of an attack from China for Vietnam, and then Singapore, much more its neighbors, Malaysia and Indonesia. And Harris has to balance showing a united stance with these countries and making really concrete commitments when she's meeting with the leaders privately, while also not overstepping both in terms of her relationship with Biden, but also not overstepping in a way that would make Vietnam or Singapore act more provocatively vis-a-vis China than the U.S. would like.
Well, U.S. relations in Southeast Asia were impacted under the Trump administration, as you and I have discussed before, Isaac. Is Vice President Harris trying to mend some fences with this particular trip?
Impact is a very polite way of saying that. I think she certainly is. There's a lot of frustration among Southeast Asian nations and thought leaders in Southeast Asia that the U.S. under Trump ignored them, dismissed them, didn't respect them, didn't see them as both an important trading pact, but also as a very positive bulwark against China and the influence of the Chinese Communist Party globally. So Harris going, Defense Secretary Austin going, and then the calls that Secretary of State Blinken has had with leaders in the region is a really good sign that the U.S. sees at least some of the importance of Southeast Asia.
Well, it has made headlines in the past when U.S. presidents visited Vietnam. But interestingly, Harris is going to become the first vice president to visit the country when she arrives there Tuesday. Why is that stop so important?
It is striking that she'll be the first sitting U.S. vice president to visit Vietnam. And this is a country that we invaded, that we fought a devastating losing war with. And when U.S. presidents started going back to Vietnam, that was a major story of reconciliation. And I think with someone in the vice presidency seat, it normalizes the relationship. It says we're not only about our history, we're also about the current quality of the relationship and the future of the relationship.
Isaac, the vice president is not going to Indonesia. Is there intentionality in that? Is it being considered a snub?
One hopes that there's intentionality in all of these little decisions. It's difficult to know if the Biden administration is intending to snub Indonesia, possibly because of worsening freedoms at home. Indonesia sliding away from being a moderately healthy democracy to being a slightly less healthy democracy. That said, neither Singapore nor Vietnam are paragons of liberalism or democracy either. They're both more repressive than Indonesia, but it's the trend that matters, and Indonesia is moving in the wrong direction. It also might be that with Harris's very tight schedule, Singapore and Vietnam were more important. And it's not that Indonesia is not a very crucial linchpin of U.S. strategy in the region, but that based on what Harris wanted to get out of the trip, Vietnam and Singapore were the best bets.
All right. Isaac Stonefish, thank you.
Thank you.